All right. Well, welcome to BSing with Sean K. I'm your host, Sean Kneese. Today, my guest is Marissa Martinez. She is the vocalist and guitarist of the band Cretin. So, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, just tell us about yourself and how you got started with music.
Oh, well, my dad was a guitar player back in the late 60s and early 70s. And so I guess there was always kind of like an expectation that one day I would go in that route. Um, and back, in the late 80s, early 90s, all my skateboarding buddies, we started getting into metal and punk and uh, one friend in particular had a bunch of instruments. Like they were just a really musical family, and so we would sit around and skateboard at his house, and then we all started picking up instruments. And I realized that my dad's guitar, I inherited it. He died when I was 5. And my grandparents just held on to it forever. So I went and got it back from them and started playing then. And we, like try to cover Metallica songs or whatnot.
And so, like, how would you describe like the style of music you play for people that might not be familiar? I guess.
Well, I think we play death metal, but we get called grindcore a lot, which is understandable because our main influence is Repulsion, who they're also labeled a proto-grind band. They're considered grindcore. But I think we're a little bit more on the metal side than the hardcore side, which are two things that, smush together to comprise grindcore, essentially. It's like hardcore punk, but, with a lot of metal influence into it as well. And we tend to be on the more metallic side.
And how did you get exposed to this style of music, and like what was its initial appeal to you?
Well, I started playing thrash, and I mean, I just really liked it. It just really resonated with me. And as I started to like really, embrace playing guitar more than like skateboarding and seriously practicing and learning how to play, my best friend, he had picked up a bass. Matt Widener, he's actually the bass player for Cretin. He had gotten a bass, and he was playing in some like Christian ska band at the time, and he really wanted to be playing death metal because he had found death metal. He went from thrash to death metal, and he discovered it before I did. And so when he found out that I was playing guitar and playing metal, he was like, "Oh, maybe I can convince Marissa to like get into death metal." And so he started exposing me to it, and like I totally didn't get it at first, right? Like the vocals, I think, are the most striking thing when it comes to death metal, and it was hard to embrace them at first because I was very much into thrash, which, while screaming, has a little bit more singing involved than like death metal or grindcore does. But he just kept like exposing me to it, like showing me like The Cause of Death from Obituary and Carcass's Symphonies of Sickness and Dismember, like a Never Flowing Stream. Like those albums were pretty much the first ones that I got exposed to. Cannibal Corpse, Eaten Back to Life, and eventually, I think Obituary was my gateway. Like Symphonies of Sickness, from the album artwork and the stuff they were singing about, it was like, whoa, this is too intense. Like I don't know about this. I don't get it at first, right? But once I got into Obituary and I really started embracing the music, particularly like Cannibal Corpse, it just went really quick from there. Like it was just like, oh my god, and suddenly I got it, what Carcass were doing, and they became one of my favorite bands of all time.
And what was it like promoting your music when you first got started?
Oh geez, we didn't. I mean, we were in high school. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which is like Santa Cruz is a beach town in California, and in the mountains, the towns are pretty small out there. So we went, the high school we went to probably had, I don't know, 500 students at the most, and all of the metalheads were like into thrash. They weren't into death metal, and there wasn't a lot of them anyway. So, you know, initially we were just dumb high school kids that are like trying to figure out how to play this music, and we were like really bad at it. Like we couldn't write a song to save our lives. It took a while for us to like really learn how to write a song, and you know, most of that is like attribute to Matt Harvey and Exhumed, because those guys, they had songs, they were writing songs, they were putting together out, you know, demos that were like the length of albums, and Harv in particular is such a encyclopedia of metal. I mean, the guy just like, he just exudes metal. Like it's almost like, I want to say it's effortless to him, but he would probably disagree. But anyway, there was a lot to learn there, and you know, Cole really knows his shit too. So you know, Cole's our drummer, and so you know, we all worked well together now. But initially, it was those initial days in like '94, I think it was, when Matt joined Exhumed on bass, and we all just kind of developed this really close friendship, and would sit around and talk metal and till, you know, like the wee hours of the morning, and you know, finally crash on Harv's floor or something. And yeah.
And how would you say like the sounds developed from when you first started until now?
Okay, so yeah, I guess my point there was, so Matt and I tried in like '92, early '93, to like, you know, put the band to make our own band, Cretin. That's when we came up with the name and kind of like the lyrical concepts that we would try to go after, which are stories about like freaky people and freaky situations. But musically we didn't know what the hell we were doing, and we kept writing just stuff we didn't even really have the ability to play yet. And so then Matt, we shelved the band, and Matt joined Exhumed, and so through that we started learning more about how to play metal. But then after a while of being in Exhumed, Matt got disillusioned, and he ended up joining the Marine Corps. So then he was going to be gone for 4 years, right? So I couldn't do anything. So I just kind of kept dabbling with song ideas here or there. I went back to school and got an AS in like being a computer technician, and starting my career in the games industry. And then eventually Matt was coming back from the Marine Corps, and he started working on the county medical examiners, and that kind of kicked me in the butt. And so I decided, no, I got to write some songs. So I wrote a few songs and jammed them with Cole, and you know, I let Cole and Matt hear the songs, and everybody dug it. They dug what we were doing, like some hybrid between Repulsion and Terrorizer. And so we just started playing then. At that point, it took a long time. Like there was a bunch of experimentation that I needed to do, and eventually one day I just kind of came to this realization that like I was forcing myself to write to other people's styles rather than just write how I normally write. I just didn't know any better, I guess. And so finally, when I just decided, no, I'm just going to write what I want to write, like then it started coming like more naturally, and what came out was like what you hear, which is like this hybrid between Repulsion and Terrorizer.
So now it's like more organic. The songs just come out, I guess.
Yeah, a lot easier. I mean, I take my time writing things, and I try to find, you know, when I write riffs, I want to make sure that you can hum them, so that there's something to latch onto. I'm a big proponent in like having a melody to your riffs rather than just the noisy effect that a lot of grindcore bands go for. I want to have something to sing, right? Because you're not going to be singing the vocals, so that's kind of how I write. But Matt does a lot of the writing of the music as well, and he's a lot more dynamic. He's way more talented than I am, to be frank. And so like the really like musically proficient stuff that you hear coming out of us, that usually comes from Matt. My stuff is, you're pretty guaranteed what you're going to get when I sit down and write something. It's just like a freight train moving forward, you know?
And so, like, what's the latest news with your music, and what do you have planned for the future?
We're not really quite sure. We came out with Stranger, our second album, in December of 2014. And we were gonna play some shows to support it, but then Cole, our drummer, had a baby. So he's been uh, consumed with her, with his new daughter, and learning how to be a parent. Um, so, we're all really supportive of each other. So, when one of us has to take time away from the band, we're we're right there. We're still best friends, and we'll be there if anyone wants to come back and do another album. But we won't do stuff without each other. So when Cole was out, as we looked for a replacement drummer, but the closer that we got to rehearsal, it just didn't feel right. This band is really centered around our friendship, and so if one of us can't be part of it, then we'll do some other band or something.
And what can you say about like your experience playing shows and like your overall experience with the scene? I guess.
I mean, I've had a blast playing shows. I was in Repulsion for a year, and that was amazing because the exposure that we got, and we played, mostly festivals or places that, people just had never seen Repulsion before, and they're such a classic band, that, there'd be this huge draw, so we'd be playing in front of like really big audiences and playing some really great opportunities. I mean, Maryland Death Fest or when Decibel Magazine, had their big show to celebrate their 100th issue. That was an amazing event. And then Cretin, we got to do. We've played MDF. We got to do the Decibel Magazine tour in 2013 with Cannibal Corpse, Napalm Death, and Immolation, and that was just mind blowing. It was so much fun. And what's great is that all of us have careers. Even Elizabeth Shaw, our lead guitar player, she's an accountant. Cole's a scientist. Widener works for NVIDIA, and I work for Linden Lab, which is the makers of Second Life. And I used to work for Lucasfilm. Point being, we all have careers, so when we went on that tour, we actually had money, and we weren't like relying on the tour to support us and get us from town to town. So we actually could like relax a little bit, and like get a hotel room and get a shower and stuff that usually bands don't get to do, luxuries that bands don't get to do, and so it just made it a lot more fun. It was like a big vacation, really.
And so, like, has your experience like in the scene changed since? Because I know like around 2006, 2006 I think it was, you went public about being transgender. How has your like experience, I guess, changed, like as far as with people in the scene and everything since then?
Yeah, in 2007, I started transitioning. Came out soon after that in Decibel Magazine, and the response has been great, honestly. I haven't faced much backlash at all, as far as I can tell. And some internet trolls here or there, but I don't even know if I got any heckling at shows. I mean, it's so noisy anyway. Like, who knows, right? But it's not like anyone has come up to like openly harass me or anything. But I think that's just because, in metal, there's this big philosophy of like, fuck you can't tell me how to live my life. And so people like respect that when you're upfront and honest with them and say, look, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to be. Like, a lot of people respond positively to that.
So it's like a very open scene in a way, you think, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for everyone. Like, I'm sure that I know that there are trans metalheads out there because they reach out to me like on Facebook or whatever, and in a lot of ways they are having a harder time than I am. But I also live in San Francisco. All of my friends and family support me. I've been very fortunate, and not all trans people have those luxuries. Their families are the first to abandon them, or their friends. or they live in, a really red state in a really small, town, and you just get constant harassment. But that's a societal thing, right? That's not the metal scene per se. I don't really know how to. I can't say that the metal scene is necessarily any more open than the rest of the world, but it's been my experience that I haven't faced much discrimination or bigotry.
And what's been your opinion of like other people who've gone public, like Caitlyn Jenner and I think Laura Jabe Grace from Against Me? Like, have they been an inspiration in any way, or?
Well, I came out considerably, years before them, a considerable amount of years before them. So they are not my inspirations per se. I actually haven't spoken publicly on the Caitlyn Jenner coming out because I feel like she doesn't need my, encouragement or help. She's very wealthy, has the support of the industry around her, like in the media industry, and she has all the resources that she will be fine. So I just really haven't voiced anything aside from telling my mom, like, yeah, I saw this coming when the tabloid pictures started popping up, right? And as far as Laura Jane Grace, like when she came out, I think I was in Atlanta, Georgia at the time to do a photo shoot for the Women in Metal issue of Decibel magazine. So that was kind of interesting because I was out there, doing this rather political issue of a heavy metal magazine, right, where it was trying to show support for women and our contributions to metal in a way that didn't just highlight bikinis and modeling with guitars, right? So I thought that was really cool, like that at that same time another trans woman is coming out in a different scene and got a lot of support. It was really cool, and I know that she has influenced a lot of people, whether it's her fans or other trans women who really look up to her as well. Cool.
So would you say like it's helping with the progress of maybe there being more acceptance in society as a whole, or?
I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? But you got to start with exposure. And, back when I came out, even back when I came out in 2007, like, I had barely just learned that, transsexuality and transgender was, like, this actual, like, real thing that wasn't just some, like, fantasy, like, carnival sideshow kind of social experiments or what have you, right? Like, I didn't know. We didn't have the resources. The internet barely had anything on it at the time regarding resources on how to transition, that look, trans people are a real thing. Like, this isn't just some what people like to call weird delusion that's all in your head. Like, there was actual, science for it and medical study for it and resources. But at the time, it was hard to find that stuff. And now we get all this exposure, whether it's Laverne Cox, like, being a trans woman actually playing a trans woman rather than a non-trans person playing a trans person. We're getting, like, real, representation. And it's really cool, There's a lot of work that needs to be done. The marriage equality thing has eclipsed the civil rights movement for the LGBT community. And while it is a huge win, I really see it as, like, just a first step because there's a lot more civil rights out there, like the right to employment and the right to education and the right to health care that are all compromised, particularly for trans people and trans women of color. And that's, across the state, or across the nation. So there's a lot more to do, and the only way that we can do that is through exposure and through letting people know that, like, trans people aren't a carnival sideshow, and hey, you may even know one of them or look up to, a musician who's won or something like that.
And so, like, do you feel like the time before you came out, do you feel like that part of your life maybe like I don't know if like wasted in a way, but like maybe you're happier now that you're out, and like maybe is it harder to look back to like those days before? Or?
Yeah, for me it is. You hear it common. I hear it commonly that people regret waiting so long to come out. But again, we didn't have the language to know what we were dealing with, right? Like so, back in the late '80s, like I just felt like I was carrying around something that I needed to never tell anyone about, never share it, because you just didn't speak about it. I mean, even you know, even just being gay was a death sentence, right? Like, the AIDS epidemic, how, the presidency let it just languish forever. Well, it was almost like a freaking genocide, right? So
That was the Reagan years,
the Reagan,
right?
administration. So, I didn't know how to deal with it. I did my best to live up to expectations and find some amount of comfort, but eventually I just got to a point where I couldn't deal with it anymore. And there was some trans exposure at the time. Unfortunately, it was focused around the murder of Gwen Araujo, which happened out here in the Bay Area. But I guess it kind of just triggered something in me. I was also turning 30 and got my first album out, so there was a lot that was just kind of like, I don't know, building my self-confidence, I think, at the time, where it was just like, look, trans people exist and treated terribly, and, I'm an adult, and what is this secret that I'm hiding? And yet I can accomplish getting an album out. What's this secret? Like, can I accomplish that too? And it just kind of like all culminated to where I came out to my wife at the time. Dealt with it. Started marching forward.
And so like how long did you know that you felt this way, and like what was your earliest experience with it, I guess?
Yeah, with the onset of puberty is when it really started to become an issue. There's just all the changes that are associated with puberty. It just felt really, really uncomfortable. But again, like, I didn't know what the hell I was dealing with at 11, right? So I just spent most of my life repressing it. So even when things would manifest, whether it was, dreams or just general feelings, or cross-dressing, moments of cross-dressing, whatnot, I would just, I would do that, and then I would put everything away and, like, pretend like nothing happened. It was all repression. And it got to the point where it wasn't until therapy that I even remembered doing, experiencing these things as a teenager. Like, I had to go through therapy for transgender issues. It was part of the mandated process of transition anyway. And in therapy, that's where I started realizing, like, oh my goodness, yeah, there were these dreams, or or in real life, I would go sneak off and, buy women's clothing and hide it away in places in my room and wear it when my parents weren't home. Just stuff like that I had actually forgotten about because I repressed it so much.
And so was it a shock to people when you first went public about this, or like did the people close to you kind of know?
My ex-wife at the time wasn't shocked because it was something we had been dealing with for a while, and we went to couples therapy, and that's where it really came out. Matt Weidner is my best friend, right? And so we're really close, and he says that he wasn't all that shocked just because of I don't know why. There's some sort of like nurturing characteristic that I've always shown towards him. Like, it just made him think that, maybe that was some part of my feminine side or something being expressed. But like, everybody else was pretty shocked. I remember I took Cole and Harv out to dinner after a rehearsal to tell them, and they both kind of stared at me, just like in bewilderment at first, but then they quickly recovered, and Cole said, "I totally, support you, and we'll be standing by, waiting to see, like, if you want to continue doing the band or whatnot." Like they were just all very supportive. My mom didn't want to believe it at first, because she had done some research after I came out, and she came back to me and she was like, "You don't exhibit any of these characteristics of what it means to be transsexual. You didn't show any signs at at early ages and blah, blah, blah." And I told her, yeah, that's because I was repressing everything. I was hiding it. I didn't want anyone to know. So I suggested that she go to a gender therapist herself, and that way she could get informed, like, pretty much the same way that I was getting informed going through therapy. And she did that, and it worked for her, and she totally understood once she was speaking to a gender specialist. And, ever since then, I've been her daughter.
And I know, like, in an interview with Terrorizer magazine, you said, like, in a way, metal was also part of your costume, or, like, growing up as a way to
hide.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I just looked at other metalheads who were like the musicians out there and emulated them because they seemed like a pretty stark example of like masculinity. And, plus the savagery of metal, it felt like an armor. It felt like a good armor I could adorn and then, just kind of be safe against the world, People tell me all the time that they think that I have like a ton of self-confidence, that I just like exude like self-confidence whenever I walk into a room. And it's funny to hear that to me, because I think even to this day, like in a lot of ways, that's something I'm putting in front of myself to shield myself against how I'm actually feeling inside, which is like not confident, right? It's very almost kind of insecure and terrified all the time. So I don't know, and maybe that's something I just picked up from metal, and it's just the way that I shield myself against the world.
And
like, all bark and no bite.
So, did any of this come out in any of your lyrics?
No, people. After I came out, people looked at the lyrics and drew associations to them, like the song Daddy's Little Girl, which is about a father who has a son but wanted a daughter, so he feminizes his son and forces his son to transition. I didn't directly or like consciously write that to express some transgender blues that I was having or anything like that. It was just something that was in my mind, right? So I guess there's an association because, that was a situation that I was more or less dealing with at the time, but I didn't directly set out to do that, to be like, hey, see, I was hinting, or, there's clues over here or something like that. It was just, it was literally just like, we need another song. So what's another like crazy situation that we can think of to sing about?
I guess like unconsciously it was there, like in it a bit maybe or whatever.
Right. I mean, it was definitely something I knew about, a topic I knew about, right? However fetishized that song might be. I mean, it's kind of quirky, right? I mean, I have some amount of cognitive dissonance with regarding, in particular, our old lyrics, because we were very much like, we weren't hip on, social politics at all. In fact, social politics has really kind of changed since we even made the album, to the sensitivities of today. So a lot of that stuff is kind of like we read it back now, or listen to it now, and we're like, oh, geez, did we really write that? Like, that's kind of bad, right? But But it is what it is. We were trying to be shocking at the time, and we were trying to be shocking in a different way than just all the gore or misogyny or whatever that's out there. But we ended up picking up some of that.
So like, how is it? Have people been seeing you like now, like as like you want to be seen? I mean, I know you were on the cover of this one magazine. Is like women in metal.
Yeah, Decibel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think in general, going through life, I am accepted as a woman, which is great for me. I don't make too much of an effort to hide that I'm trans, aside from, when I'm walking down the street by myself, I want to feel safe. I don't want to, get assaulted or anything, or insulted for that matter. But, more or less, yeah. I mean, I've been very fortunate, right? And I was fortunate to have a career and, fortunate to have, a career that was supportive of me, and fortunate to have the resources in order to get, certain surgeries that not everyone can afford, and maybe not everyone even wants to get. But, I was able to do things that I think allow me to fit into society as me. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I'm treated as a woman, I think, as far as I know.
And would you say who you were before? Was that someone who like maybe didn't exist in a way, and like this is the real you, I guess, or?
This is the real me, but I come from my history. I prefer not to really refer to my dead name. That's what they call it, the old name. But that's probably just an emotional response, because I had to go through a transition, right? Which was kind of scary and painful at times, and tough to deal with. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my past, to be honest, aside from like, whatever I'm trying to get out of some memory. But, when I refer to myself in the past, when my family and when my friends refer to me in the past, they refer to me as Marissa, when, and that's the way it should be, because that's who I am. It's just nobody knew. Nobody was allowed to know, right? But I'm me, and I went through my history. So, yeah, typically when, not even typically, I mean, just generally, referring to me in the past is just, oh, Marissa used to skateboard, when she was in high school, or Marissa, learned how to play guitar when she was in high school, or Marissa used to be a bouncer at a bar. I mean, it ends up sounding kind of cool, actually, if you ask me, but,
And, what else, what advice would you give to like someone else who's going through similar feelings and maybe hasn't, been open about it?
Well, the only advice I ever really give is to go see a therapist who is supportive of and knowledgeable of transgender issues and transitioning. Don't go to a therapist who is, anti-trans, who is going to try to sell you on Christian therapy to, accept yourself as God made you, which is a total fucking bullshit silhouette lie, right? One, I don't believe in God, but two, we were born trans, so gotta go to a therapist who will honestly work with you, not against you on your trans issues. That's all I can tell you, because everybody's situation is so different, right? Like I've been saying, I've been very fortunate because of the resources and the support and love of family that I've had. But not everybody has that. Not everybody has a job. Not everybody lives in a location where they can be out and maintain a job, not lose it, not lose their housing, not lose their resources and their family. So I can't give advice, really.
So I guess, yeah. So I guess, like you say you've maybe had it easier, I guess, than other people.
Yeah, certainly. I've had it way easier. I know tons of trans people who, have to turn to the sex industry and are working out on the street corners, like blocks from here, really, in order to make ends meet. And I've seen them try to get jobs even here in San Francisco, and because they have some prior for prostitution, they can't get a job. So they can't even get out if they wanted to, right? They're stuck in the sex industry, the sex trade, and it's incredibly dangerous. So I haven't had to do that because of the resources that I was fortunate enough to have. So yeah, I have had it easier, and it's something that I always try to remember, especially when speaking to other people or speaking on shows like this, because if I just start giving advice based on my experience, I'm going to come off like a real idiot, to tell you the truth, because it doesn't apply to everyone, right? And I recognize that.
So like, have you been in any like support groups, like, or like maybe done any kind of thing where you help other people, or any kind of activism for transgender rights? Or
I contribute donations to things like the Transgender Law Center and other organizations that fight for LGBT civil rights and trans rights in particular, as well as like participating in some GoFundMes for some trans-specific educational programs that have started up for teaching trans people computer skills, so they can get a job in the computer industry. I haven't done any like panels or anything like that, or I used to participate in the Trans March, which would happen attached to the San Francisco Pride weekend. But I started kind of feeling bad about it because you're blocking traffic on a Friday afternoon when everyone just kind of wants to get home, and we were walking down the street, and oftentimes there wasn't a collective message that it was there. It was just like, we're trans, or we support trans people, and we're blocking traffic, and it just didn't seem to really be doing much good or sending a strong message, from my perspective. But this year, I think I believe they had a more cohesive theme, but I just happened to miss the march because I had to work. But yeah, typically those are how I do things, and then just general visibility, from the bands that I've had in interviews, and I'm always there to talk to fans and just give general exposure, I guess.
are there any like laws in place now that discriminate against transgender people? I mean, or is there anything else like what you were saying, like how it's hard to sometimes get a job? Like you said, some of them were, some people were stuck like working in the sex industry.
Sure. In California, especially this last year, Jerry Brown, our governor, actually signed a bunch of new acts which progressed trans people's ability to transition in a number of ways. But there were so California is pretty good as far as trans rights are concerned. But there's 39 other states across the nation that they have no protections for LGBT people, trans people in particular. There actually is a difference between protecting the rights of gay people and protecting the rights of trans people, and trans people are largely way more at risk. So, there's national movements that are out there, like the ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which is languishing in the Senate, but that's the next big push, and that is to protect people's right to work federally, like all across the nation, right? So that states can't have special rights where they say, no, I don't like trans people and I don't like gay people, so I'm not going to hire them. Like that, it's a movement to protect the rights to employment. And it's important. It's hugely important. But yeah, there is definitely work that's going on with that kind of stuff, and I definitely vote in favor of that kind of stuff. For obvious reasons, right? Self-preservation being one key among them. But yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I'm definitely paying attention to, and like maybe I'll make a Facebook post about it every now and then. But California is pretty well off. I don't know.
And and I know this is a common confusion people, because you were saying the difference between gay rights and transgender rights. A lot of people confuse gender identity with
sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I kind of think that a considerable amount of people are no longer confused on that situation anymore, just because things have changed so significantly in as far as like, you know, social justice matters are concerned, and exposure to it. But yeah, there's definitely a difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. That being that, in simple terms, you know, sexual orientation is who you want to go to bed with, and gender identity is who you want to go to bed as, right? We recognize ourselves as male and female or somewhere in between, and then we recognize that we are attracted to males or females or something in between. So, or both or nothing. So yeah, there's definitely a difference there. And, in a lot of ways, the portions of society that are resistant to LGBT anything are largely more resistant to trans than they are to homosexual or sexual orientation nonconformity. And they just see trans as being an extension of sexual orientation. You know, if like in my case, if I'm a trans woman, then I must be hyper gay. A hyper gay male, right? And that's just not the case. I mean, for one thing, to be gay, I would have to be attracted to the same sex as me, right? And that has nothing to do with me being a woman, except that it would define that as a woman being attracted to women, I'm gay, right? But that's not even how they see it, right? Because they see me as a gay male. So it's like, if I'm attracted to men, then I'm a gay male. But maybe I'm not attracted to men. I happen to be attracted to both. But, you know, I know trans women or trans men who are attracted to, so trans women who are attracted to women and trans men who are attracted to men. And they consider themselves homosexual in those senses, right? Whereas the portion of society that we're talking about that would be resistant would not. They would just see them as like really messed up in the head or something. Delusional, I think, is the word that I see them say most often. And it's just, I don't know that we'll ever convince those people. But, you know, society seems to be moving forward with this stuff. And big portions of society are supportive of trans people as well as gay people. So things are looking up. You know, who's going to get left behind? I really don't know.
And you recently got married too. Did he know? Did your husband know you were as soon as you met, or what happened?
Yeah. So my husband definitely knew I was trans before he even reached out to date me. He's a metalhead too, so he knew the story. And we both participated on the same metal forum, which was like the Reboard is what we call it. It was a board that used to be a metal forum for Relapse Records, and then it split off to do its own independent thing. And we would both be on there, making jokes and talking about metal and whatnot. And one day he posted that he was in San Francisco and looking for stuff to do. So he started making a bunch of suggestions of things that he could go do or go see. And one of our mutual friends on the board, said, hey, Brian's great people. Marissa, go hang out with him. And I was like, sure, okay, fine, I'll hang out with him. Fellow metalhead, we'll sit around, drink some beers, and talk metal. And it ended up that he was really trying to date me. And he had, planned a nice dinner for us, and then we went and, shot some pool and drank beers and listened to metal and just had a really good time. And so he lived in LA at the time, and I live in San Francisco, so we were texting back and forth and, just to kind of get to know each other, and eventually we did, and we started dating. And it just kind of evolved from there until we got married in December of 2013. I'm not sure why I keep doing everything in December.
And so is it hard for a lot of transgender people to date, and find people that are open to dating transgender people, or?
That's how it's commonly reported. I mean, I was reading an article just yesterday that was saying how difficult it is for trans people to find lovers, especially trans women among straight men, because straight men put so much emphasis, on their masculinity, and part of what equates as being, really masculine, I suppose, is being straight and attracted to women. And so if you are attracted to trans women, there's this misconception that you're not attracted to, quote unquote, a real woman. And therefore it leaves you exposed to ridicule. But my experience in dating was that I never had any trouble dating. It went pretty easily, but I was also hanging out in a bar that is dedicated to trans women. It's called Divas here in San Francisco, and it's a bar to go meet and date and drink with trans women, essentially. So anyone that was coming in there, they already kind of knew the story. So that kind of made things a little bit easier, although a lot of them were just, they wanted to keep it a secret, and they were just there to, get a quick one-night stand and be on their way. I also would hang out at a lesbian bar, where there it was a little bit more difficult, but only because I think that I feel like it's harder to date women as a woman, because at least the women that I'm attracted to, it's like we're both sitting there waiting for one or the other to approach. And I don't want to approach, so I end up just kind of sitting there by myself. So that's my own doing, really. But yeah, I just never really had that much trouble, getting dates or finding people. Finding love was definitely a longer process, but it happened. So it happened within a pretty short amount of time. So yeah, again, just another example of where I guess I've been fortunate where others haven't.
And I guess that's another thing that can kind of, progress over time, people's comfort, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I haven't seen Brian get any kind of bigotry or discrimination thrown his way. And every time we've gone anywhere, everybody just treats him cool, and they like him and stuff. So I haven't really seen anything judgmental happen.
So what else can you say that you're working on, like in the way of music? I know you said you were jamming with a newer band recently.
Yeah, those plans fell through because stupid Bart is closed down across the bay, and they're out in Oakland. But yeah, there's a band I'm gonna try out for on guitar, death metal band out in Oakland. Just a little project that sounds pretty old school death metal and fun, so I thought I'd check it out. And you know, in general, I'm just kind of sitting around waiting for inspiration right now. I'm not actively working on anything because, you know, I don't know when or if, you know, Cole wants to come back or when that might happen. There was some talk about it over my birthday barbecue, so, you know, we'll see what happens. But right now, yeah, there's not much going on, and work is like crazy right now, so we're hitting a pre-alpha state and everything's in crunch, so it's kind of hard to even think about music at the moment. But yeah.
And is there any other styles you might experiment with in the future, or any others maybe you have in the past? Or?
I mean, as far as writing music, I write the way I write, and so it's always going to sound like Cretin to some degree. But if I was to play another type of sound, you know, it would be within death metal, most definitely. That's just where my interest is, you know, that's the music that I really love and that really resonates with me. So it will probably always be some form of quote unquote old school death metal, right? Which actually, for some reason, you know, you say old school death metal and you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It actually has its own sound. Before it was just death metal. But it's progressed so much that you can say old school and that means something. So that's probably what would be going on, yeah.
And so where would you like to one day be with your music? Would you like to one day be doing it as a full-time thing, or?
No. I have a lot of fun with my music, but I don't want to rely on it to put bread and butter on the table. I think that would make it really stressful. Whereas I just want to have fun with it, you know, and that's what I get to do. So I'm pretty much there, you know, as long as, well, I'm not there right now because I'm not actually like jamming weekend in and weekend out, but you know, I'd like to be doing that some more and maybe working on a new album of some sort, actively. But otherwise, I mean, I've kind of done it, right? I mean, it was pretty awesome. I'm not saying I'm done, but like, we did it the way that we wanted to do it, which was really cool. And so, you know, hopefully we'll get to do that again some more.
And it's out there for like a lot of people to hear and everything. So I guess that's what matters the most, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what's really cool. And, you know, like Freakery, our first album is even like in some digital jukeboxes. I haven't seen Stranger in them yet, but, you know, so it's like, you know, from the internet to record stores to even jukeboxes and bars, like our album is out there, and, you know, and then we came out with a second album, Stranger, and it's amazing. It's so awesome to have those things done and like to be able to listen to them and like you hear the feedback of the fans, and people were extremely blown away with our new album, Stranger, and it just feels really good to have like participated in that, you know, in making something that people enjoy just as much as we do. Because it was a lot of work. It wasn't easy. It took us forever, for one thing, but we really wanted to do our best with it, and so it's great that people really appreciate it. It feels really good.
And so, like, does your day job like relate to anything you enjoy in any way, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. My day job is I'm leading the QA effort for our next generation product, which is very similar to Second Life, right? We're just doing the next generation of it, which it's basically what we do is we provide the engine and rendering techniques and the environment essentially for people to create their own content and create their own worlds and scenes and VR experiences within our software. And that ultimately turns into a marketplace where people actually make money making virtual products that other people then buy so that they can, make their avatar or make their little house or make a nightclub out in virtual 3D world, and go share experiences with each other and build communities together. And some schools use it for classrooms where they give virtual classes. There's the possibilities are endless, right? So it's basically like the ultimate extension of where I started in the industry which was video games. That I like video games a lot. And I built a career working in video games, whether it was from graphics hardware, and testing that, or then eventually getting a job at LucasArts and working on a bunch of Star Wars games. I mean, that was amazing. That was like 13 and a half years. And so then I've moved on now to Linden Lab and working on this stuff, and it's really cool. It's a lot of fun, and it's great to see it like actually really starting to come to shape now.
And so is there anything, any like final thoughts or things you'd like to say? Or?
Well, thanks a lot for having me. It was great talking to you. Yeah, I don't have anything to promote or anything, so I guess, to the fans, I'll see you at the next show or festival that's going on that I happen to be at, and otherwise, cheers.
And where should people check out your music and everything, and social media and all that?
Right, so we're signed to Relapse Records, so relapserecords.com will have the album where it can be purchased. We're also on iTunes or Bandcamp and all those places as well. And then Facebook is, I have my personal Facebook, but the band's Facebook is facebook.com/CRETANIC.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, so I think that does it for this episode of BSing with Sean K. Thanks a lot, Marissa, for coming on.
Thank you.
And yeah, so I should have more episodes coming soon, so stay tuned.